is the main event.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this wonderful pre-WrestleMania day. I am Troy of the Main Event Marks. My co-host Greg is actually flying to Dallas as I record this video, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the grandest stage of them all, the show of shows coming up in two parts this weekend. It's WrestleMania 38 weekend, and today with me to run down a little bit of that, because anybody who listens to the podcast knows I only mildly keep up with the product and mostly just watch pay-per-views. Joining me today is Will Gray from the Botched Spots and Chair Shots podcast. What's up, man?
Man, I'm glad to be here, Troy. Thanks for having me on today. I'm excited to break down some Mania with you.
Yeah, me too. I, like I said, only mildly keep up with the product. I know of some stuff going on, but I mostly read the reports, see the highlights of the shows, stuff like that, and then I'll watch the pay-per-views most of the time. Greg is really the one that follows everything religiously and watches every show live, so him not being here is kind of a handicap. But you said you keep up with all the products, and you were willing to jump on with me, and I'm like, hell yeah, I'm always willing to bring new voices on. So let's talk about WrestleMania, man. There is some good stuff. There for a while I was calling it Rematch-mania because it looks like there are a handful of rematches going on here. But the first thing on night one, on April 2nd, I want to talk about is the Seth Rollins match. That, from everything, it seems like that's opening the show. Am I right?
From my notes, say right now it's going to be the opening match on night one. Vince on Monday said that Rollins was going to be on the card, but he wouldn't know who his opponent was until he got to the ring WrestleMania night. All the rumors and the dirt sheets are speculating that it's going to be Cody Rhodes. Where do you think they're at with that?
Oh man. Yeah, I've been seeing all the same stuff too, saying that, well, Cody's finally signed. He finally signed. And, I mean, that could be true. I mean, there's really not any place else. If Cody wants to keep wrestling, the only other place he could go, really, realistically, would be WWE. Because he's not going to move to Japan.
I completely agree. I think if Cody's going to make a jump from AEW to another major promotion, he's not going to downgrade back to an NWA or a Ring of Honor style system. With Ring of Honor being owned by AEW now, we know that with his contract being null and void, he's going to be moving to another promotion. All signs lead to Connecticut. But when it comes down to this, it wouldn't surprise me if Vince threw a curveball, though, and gave us somebody like a Veer, or brought somebody back, for instance, like an Elias. And I know that seems like a stretch, but we've seen WWE do worse things with less.
I didn't even think about Veer. I did see people speculating. They were like, expectation, Cody, reality, Elias. And then Shane McMahon was even trending on Twitter because people are like, what if it's Shane? That would be horrible.
I think seeing Shane at Mania would be a very McMahon thing to do, but I don't think they're going to give him this kind of a spotlight, especially after the whole release scandal that went ahead with Daddy letting his baby boy go earlier in the year. So I feel like if it's going to be somebody against Rollins, it's going to be a wrestler that we know is coming to WWE, and it'll be a debut. So I'm thinking Veer, Cody, somebody like an Elias, but I don't think they'll give him that spot at Mania either. If it's not Rhodes, I think the IWC is going to melt down and implode from within. So I think that's the thing that would make the most sense for Vince and those guys up there right now.
Yeah, I really do think. I mean, 9 out of 10, it's probably going to be Cody.
Agreed.
Do you think he'll have any of his AEW trappings with him? And if so, how much?
I think that this has all been a ploy to him leaving AEW. If you go back far enough when he started to look at things like trademarks for the name, the American Dream. So I feel like it's going to be a blend of his AEW nonsense with a new gimmick specifically for WWE. I see it being the prodigal son returning, the dreams boy comes home kind of thing. Like, I see that being the angle. I don't know if there'll be a heel or a babyface when he first debuts, but if he comes in and they play that angle, I see him pushing him to the moon. But after that, I'm not sure what they're going to do with Rhodes after that initial push.
Yeah, and I liked, when Cody Rhodes was Cody Rhodes, I liked almost everything he did in WWE. It was pretty entertaining stuff with the dashing stuff, and then the undashing Cody Rhodes and all that. I really enjoyed all that. I didn't much. The Rhodes Scholars thing was it was okay, but for the most part, I thought he was a cool character that had a lot of legs to him, and I think he did a real good job reinventing himself out once he left WWE. And it's like a Drew McIntyre thing where, I mean, Cody became a jobber sort of as Stardust, but I think he left and he did a lot more than Drew McIntyre did on the Indies and, elsewhere outside WWE. But now he's coming back, and I think he could be a top guy. But so far his track record is 4 years in an organization. Then he gets annoyed with where his character is and he leaves.
He left WWE. Yeah, he left WWE about 6 years ago because he was at Ring of Honor in New Japan for a couple of years, and then he was with AEW for about 3 years. So all of that sounds true. One thing I will applaud Cody for when he left WWE was, I don't like the fact that Nick Aldis dropped the NWA World's Heavyweight title to him, but between WWE and AEW, he did have a chance to hold the 10 pounds of gold. So him and the American Dream are the most recent father-son tandem to both hold the belt.
Yeah, and that was a good match. It didn't last for very long. It was basically like he won the title just long enough to say, "Hey, look, I was the champion."
Yeah, that's what I feel like it was too. And then Aldis picked it back up, and Nick carried it for another 1,000 days after that. So I feel like all that was just a cheap pop to give Cody the strap, and then he immediately dropped it back to Nick Aldis, and he ran with it. I think going back to WWE makes the most sense for Cody in this move where he's at in his career, though.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm kind of disappointed that such a one of the founding members of AEW left to go back to WWE. Kind of annoys me, especially when he'd been doing all the. He took cheap shots at Triple H specifically and WWE almost literally from their first pay-per-view. So I don't know. That bugs me a little bit, but at the same time, it's whatever. I might care about him now that he's in WWE because I was, like most AEW fans, I was tired of seeing him towards the end there. It was like the same formula over and over with every new person and every feud he had, and I got sick of seeing it. So, and I think everybody else did. So this is a new coat of paint.
Completely agree. His formula in AEW was copy and paste, and since he couldn't really push for the world title, it just seemed like he was going through these nonsensical programs person to person without really having any long-term destination for the character.
Right. And if anybody wants to see or hear about that event where Cody won the 10 pounds of gold, by the way, it's in our archives. We covered All In 2018. So people can go back and check that out. Moving on, night one, though, past that, is the New Day of Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston taking on Sheamus and Ridge Holland with Butch in their corner. It's a weird trio. I will say this. I think the trio is fine. The fact that they all dress like they're from Peaky Blinders is kind of weird.
I was hoping you'd say that because I was going to if you didn't.
Yeah. And renaming Pete Dunne Butch, like, why? I don't know. But what's the build up for this one here?
I feel like this match was the build up leading into this was up until Big E got hurt. So get well soon, Big E. But them adding Kofi and Xavier together gave Xavier a push back after his injury, Big E. So it's kind of that rebound match between the two teams. I feel like the Butch thing, to me, it kind of goes with the whole concept that the WWE has an identity crisis. They build these characters up in NXT and they develop stars like Pete Dunne. But when they move him to the main roster, they repackage him in this pretty little box and they name it Butch. But for some reason, they expect us to forget and have amnesia that for the last 5 years, he was one of the most pound for pound, like, best wrestlers in NXT and NXT UK. But now all of a sudden, he's just Butch. And I feel that Rich Holland and Sheamus and him together would be a killer stable if they would just let those three guys be themselves the same way they've let Big E, Kofi Kingston, and Xavier Woods be themselves in the New Day this whole time. Sometimes you just got to let guys do their own thing, I guess.
And this is Sheamus's, like, third or fourth recreation.
Yeah, he's gone through a bunch of gimmicks where they're just kind of the same character with a new coat of paint on it, like you were saying. So he, like, gets a new jacket and a new hat, and he's the new Sheamus.
Yeah. I mean, it's a step up from the Mohawk, I think, and the weird Viking look, but
I kind of liked him when he was in the bar. When he was teaming with Cesaro, I thought he was kind of a rock star. Like, I got behind that tag team big time, but I just, for some reason, his singles runs outside of his world title have just kind of all fallen flat for me. Like, I can't think of a big rivalry right offhand for Sheamus outside of the world title picture that really, like, blew my socks off. I know he's a great wrestler. He looks great in the ring. He works well. It's just never really been my cup of tea. And I feel like this is one of those situations where they're throwing a talent into a stable because they need something for these guys to do on TV.
yeah, it was like, well, dang it, he's from the UK. Throw him in there. Like, it's the only thing I can think of. Real quick, did you have any predictions on the winner of the if it is Seth versus, we'll say Seth versus Cody, what do you think would be the result of that?
If it's Seth versus Cody, it's going to be a protected finish, so I'm going to go with a DQ or a no contest of some kind. If it's Seth versus anybody else, Seth will go over and he'll be the winner.
Yeah, because they're still building him up. I think the only way he would lose if it's somebody else is if it's like, I go back to the Elias thing. I've heard rumors that Vince really likes Elias and he wants to build him up into a star. And if that's true, there you go. You know, beat Seth Rollins in a surprise match on WrestleMania, and go from there. But yeah, if it's Cody, I think it's no contest.
I've seen Vince say that he likes Elias a lot, but we've also seen him in the past claim superstars to be the next big thing, and it take 5 or 10 years for them to get over. Like Drew McIntyre was the next, he was supposed to be the next thing, and then he ended up having to leave WWE, completely rebrand himself, and then come back to be a superstar. And I feel like Elias might need to do that same thing. Leave, regain his composure and his stature, redevelop his gimmick and who he is, and then come back without being that carbon copy of what Vince and WWE needed him to be 5 years ago, but be Elias in 2022 now.
And I don't know how much truth there is to this at all. I try not to buy too much into internet rumors, but I had read something that they were going to bring him back in traditional, like, trunks and boots and stuff, and Vince said he looked way too much like the Macho Man, so he scrapped it.
I don't understand why he would be so against, and not that he need to rebrand a superstar to be like Macho Man, but we see so much getting, like, recycled through history and wrestling today, even down to, like, the Young Bucks and AEW. Like, people still see Macho's moves getting over, so I don't see why Vince is so afraid to allow his history to be displayed today outside of documentaries on Peacock.
My only thought with that is he wants Elias to stand on his own, not be thought of as the next this guy or something like that, or hey, he kind of looks like so and so.
Yeah, I get that. Makes sense. That makes total sense. I mean, you look at that when you saw Goldberg come over from WCW too, like. Everybody always wanted that Stone Cold Goldberg match because they always looked alike. And that was kind of the things they both said they've hated it their whole careers, how they could walk through an airport and somebody will call them the other name. So I can understand the wanting to avoid that in the open market with the rest of the talent too. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and the way the hair, the goatee, and the black trunks are really where the similarities stop. I mean, past that, they're nothing alike. So I don't think that match would have been all that great. I think we had a better match with Goldberg and Rock, honestly. Moving on with this one, there's quite a few tag matches on night one here. We've got the Usos defending. Are they defending the tag? Yeah, defending the SmackDown tag titles against Shinsuke Nakamura and Rick Boogs. Who I will never forget was in NXT for a minute as Bugenhagen. This is something. Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on with this?
So ultimately what happened was Boogs and Nakamura got a title shot at mid-March roughly. Jimmy offered Boogs and Nakamura a title shot at WrestleMania if Boogs could defeat Jey Uso. So he went in there, Boogs handled business, did some work, and that's how we got to this title. It's a cool way to put the SmackDown titles on the line, but there wasn't more than just a week or two build up in this story, and I feel like that's the most common denominator across this whole card. There's so many matches that they didn't have, 6-8 weeks to build all of them up. And it's just some of them just fell short on the story development. Do I think Usos and Boogs and Nakamura are going to be a killer match? On paper, they should be. But I just feel like the development of the story fell a little flat because it was like, okay, beat my brother, you get the title shot, there it is.
So my thought is WWE had a handful of really good matches, but they're like, we have to stretch this out to 2 nights. So we just got to make crap up. Normally, like WrestleMania 35, I feel like they actually had story and stuff behind a lot of those matches and actual built-up feuds, and that deserved 2 nights because it was so damn long. Even diehard WWE marks like my co-host said he was tired at the end of that night. It was a long haul. And then he waited 3 hours for any form of transportation to get out of there because everything was so messed up. But with this one, I feel like they're like, well, instead of having a card that needs 2 nights, they have 2 nights that need a card.
I completely agree with that, yeah.
And I like New Japan, but like they had 3 nights of Wrestle Kingdom this year, and I know diehard New Japan fans will argue with me about this, but I mean, honestly, when you watch almost 50% of the card, usually at the beginning of every big New Japan card, is just throwaway, 3 or 8 or 6 or 8 man tags, and a handful of Young Lions matches and stuff like that. So they're like padding the beginning of the card. And I don't want WWE to do that because they're better than that. They don't need to. I'm not saying New Japan sucks and they have to do that, but that's just kind of tradition for them.
I likened it.
Do you have any?
I likened it to college football.
Oh, go ahead.
I said that when everybody gets a bowl game, the postseason loses its relevancy, and I kind of feel that with WrestleMania now.
Yep.
They have so many matches. If everybody gets a WrestleMania match, does it really mean as much as it used to?
Yeah, I said that years ago when they started even the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. I'm like, this is literally just so that everybody gets a WrestleMania payday.
Yeah.
And it's not needed. Nobody cares about it. It doesn't do anything for anybody. So I don't know. It's just a fun little throwaway battle royal at the beginning of the card, I guess. Did you have any predictions on? I mean, I'm assuming the Usos are just going to walk away with this one.
I say the Usos are going to retain solely because of my prediction in the Roman match later, and I don't want to spill the beans there. I just don't see them dropping the belts on the Bloodline yet, because if they drop the Usos titles, it weakens Roman's title by proxy, because they've all carried their titles together for so long now that I feel like if they drop theirs, then it's going to make the Bloodline, I guess they could do it in story to make the Bloodline appear weaker to eventually dethrone Roman. But I just don't see them dropping the belts, and especially not to Boogs and Nakamura. It's really going to surprise me if they do.
Last thing with this is, I've never actually seen Boogs have like much of a match. Is he good?
He looks like the guy that you would think would be good if he was in NXT for a cup of coffee and then they called him up to national TV with like 6 months of training. I mean, I'm going to call it what it is.
I know he's entertaining.
Yeah, he's fun to watch. He's got charisma out the wazoo, and the guy can talk, and he's got like the character down. His in-ring work just looks a little green to me. So give him another year or two. He could be a star. I just feel right now he's popular by proxy because he's got Nakamura with him in the corner, and he's got the guitar rock star feel to him. Like, he's just popular, and I feel like that's why his push has been so successful. Not necessarily because of his in-ring work, but because of everything else.
I feel you. Our first celebrity match and another tag team match on this card is the Mysterios. Ray and Dominic are taking on The Miz and Logan effing Paul. Why is this being thrust upon us?
I have said for the last 2 years now that Paul's name has been on the WrestleMania marquee 2 years in a row now, because he was there last year with his moment with KO and those guys, and now he's here this year with The Miz and the Mysterios. And I get having, a Sinead O'Connor or a Mike Tyson at WrestleMania because of what they represent to pop culture. But to shove Logan Paul and Johnny Knoxville down our throats, I feel like it's just cheap pops for cheap pops.
Yeah, I mean, I like Johnny Knoxville, but when I was like, I know he's got, Jackass Forever that just came out, but I don't know. It just seems like, oh, yeah, you got Johnny Knoxville again. Cool. And I know he's a fan, so that's another reason. I feel like he did well in the role they gave him and all that. He was like Andy Kaufman crossed with a crash test dummy, but I don't know. And Logan Paul, I guess he's become more relevant again because he's got a podcast now. But the height of Logan Paul was like, what, a decade ago? I might be exaggerating a little bit, but
I'm a little bit old for the YouTube world, and my kids were super into Jake Paul because of the Disney Channel. So I learned about the Paul brothers through the Disney Channel and YouTube because of my kids. So I didn't know who they were until recently when they started boxing, and that's when I really started to deep dive into who they are. And I feel like Jake is going one direction with it, and Logan is just looking for clout. He's just doing whatever he can. He's got the energy drinks. He did WWE. He did stuff with, the Floyd Mayweather fight. I feel like he's just going to get his name on wherever he can get it right now. And I feel like this is one of those opportunities where I'm going to say this is a spot for another underdeveloped wrestler who has a chance to make a name for themselves instead of just shoving a celebrity down our throats.
Yeah. And like, I'm looking now on if anybody's ever used Social Blade at Logan Paul. He's clearly like, he still does YouTube, but I don't think that's his main his main focus anymore. He's currently got a Social Blade grade of D-. So he's only down so low, I think, because there are so many more popular channels that have come up since then. So he's not like hemorrhaging viewers or anything like that, but it's just, he's not what he once was. He's got like 152nd subscriber rank. So that's, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's not like he's hit the ground or anything like that, but he's far from being like the it guy. And it's like, oh man, you got him for WrestleMania?
Now it's just kind of like, oh, Logan Paul's back at WrestleMania.
Yeah, and now he's actually doing something, and it's like, yeah, you want to see him get punched in the face, whatever, I get it. I don't know. Did you have a prediction for this one? Because I'm thinking they're going to have the... I'm hoping the Mysterios win, but I'm thinking somehow they're going to have Miz and Paul win.
This is very reminiscent of the Bad Bunny Damian Priest match last year, and I'm hoping that Logan Paul is half as impressive in the ring as Bad Bunny was, because if they put the Miz and Logan Paul over the Mysterios, he's gonna have to look like $1 million to make it believable.
I will say that Bad Bunny did great. He doesn't look like an athlete. He looks like a string bean. So the only thing Logan Paul has up on him so far is he looks athletic, and he looks like he can do something. Doesn't necessarily mean he will.
I've seen video footage of him on Twitter and Instagram coming off the top rope, and he's called his shot. He says he's going to hit a frog splash at Mania. So if he does it, like, big props to him for working on that, because coming off the top rope, I don't care how long you do it, it's never easy. So he's working on coming off the top rope, and if he can pull it off, I'll give him props for doing the work and putting the job in. But I just hope he looks good doing it. I don't want them to lose this spot on the biggest card of the year to let somebody flounder in the middle of the ring for 5 minutes.
And he's you know, that's going to get huge, like just a huge boo reaction if he messes, or if he hits that frog splash on Rey Mysterio.
Yeah, that's definitely it, and I feel like that's kind of a ballsy move of him to want to work the frog splash into a match against two guys who use it as their finish now, as like in memoriam of the best frog splash to ever do it, Eddie Guerrero. So if he hits the frog splash and it's not picture perfect, he's going to get eaten alive for that.
I think just the fact that him doing it is just because he's a forever heel, him and his brother both. He just wants to get the booze. I think he's embraced it by this point that everybody hates him, and I think he's like cool with it at this point. So there's that, you know, something to be said for that. God, how could I forget this one? Drew McIntyre versus Happy Corbin with Madcap Moss in his corner. God, I don't even know what to say about this one. What's up with Drew and Corbin here?
So for the last few months, dating back to day one, Drew McIntyre about decapitated Madcap Moss in a Falls Count Anywhere match at that pay-per-view. So since January, these three have been feuding back and forth. Drew will take on one, and it'll be a DQ or a no contest, and then he'll take on the other guy. And he's been bouncing around between the three of them since January. Everybody felt like that was always going to lead to McIntyre and Corbin at WrestleMania. And it's exactly what it was. They've been able, this is one of the few times on the card where we've gotten, 2 or 3 months of buildup for this story, because this all started back literally on day one, pun intended, with the Drew McIntyre Madcap Moss match, or whatever the guys. I'm not a big fan. I did my research for you before this, and I still can't believe that this is on the main card. Drew McIntyre is one of those guys where I feel like he could be killing it in a world title scene now that fans are back in, and instead he's getting Happy Corbin. The build-up was cool for the last few months, but this match, I've seen Drew McIntyre and King Corbin work, and I feel like that we're going to get the same match over again that we've already seen 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, and I don't know why they can't just leave well enough alone with Baron Corbin. Like, sure, maybe freshen him up a little bit when he was the lone wolf, because after a while, it's like, all right, whatever, who cares? Once you've seen it, you've seen it. But he's went through, dressing like a waiter at TGI Fridays to, King Corbin, and then what the hell did they call him when he was broke? And he was dressing like a hobo. It was Sad Corbin?
Sad Corbin, and then he became Happy Corbin.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. It's Sad Corbin, and then Happy Corbin, and it's like, my God. And now he dresses like he is walking into walking up to a slot machine in Vegas or something, and like, why? Just have him be Baron freaking Corbin again, and maybe more people will care. Like, I have not spoke to anybody who it's not that they hate him, they just don't care about him, and that's the worst. Like, if they can make you hate a guy, great. If they make you not care about a guy, what is the point of him?
The perfect example of that is King Corbin. I hated King Corbin because of who he was as a character. But the moment they started transitioning into the Sad Corbin and Happy Corbin, I just lost interest in the character. It was hard for me to take him as serious as Sad Broke Corbin as he was as the powerhouse, as the lone wolf, or as King Corbin. I didn't like him as heel King Corbin, but he did his job because that means I didn't like him, which was what he wanted to do. And I feel like now he's just kind of lost in limbo.
Yep. Yeah, and this one, I guess from everything Greg has told me, Happy Corbin is undefeated. So, do you think he keeps that streak alive, or do you think Drew beats him?
I think that Happy Corbin will take the win here, but I'm going to predict that it'll be a dirty win. I think Madcap Moss will play some kind of a role in this for the victory to go to Corbin.
I don't know. Drew has been screwed over too many times at WrestleMania. Even when he faced Roman Reigns, like, it was right after the Kofi win, so nobody cared, and you could have just heard a mouse pissing on cotton from the cheap seats. And then, I mean, his triumphant WWE title win was in front of nobody.
Agreed.
And it sucked. I mean, last year he got his moment, but
he didn't really get his true moment, though. And I said that it's an unpopular opinion because I think that him having to hold the title during the Thunderdome era cheapened his title reign. I feel like in the big scheme of things, like, Drew deserved more than what he got, but he was dealt the cards that he had to take because of the timing. They knew he was going to get the push to being the champion. It was just really crappy timing for him to do it and then immediately have to do so in the Thunderdome. Because by the time they were ready for his push to be over and to drop the belt, fans were coming back. So he literally held the belt pretty much the entire time, with the exception of Orton's little 2-week run. But, like, for the most part, it was pretty much Drew McIntyre the whole time in the Thunderdome, and I feel like it cheapened his title reign because of it.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. He did well, I feel like, as well as he possibly could have, and he seemed like a champion. So there's that. But yeah, and then Corbin's had multiple wins at WrestleMania that I'm just like, who cares? Like, why are you on my TV? Like, I don't know. They have both women's title matches on night one. That shocked me. We've got Becky Lynch defending against Bianca Belair for the Raw Women's title, and then Charlotte Flair defending the SmackDown Women's title against Ronda Rousey. I saw most of the build up to these. The Becky Lynch thing has been going on since SummerSlam. When she came back. So this is kind of a long build. And then Rousey, obviously, that's been building since the Rumble. I mean, did you figure that these would be the women's matches for the titles?
I thought, honestly, it was going to be when they went into the Elimination Chamber match and the winner got a shot at the Raw Women's title. I thought they were going to blend it somehow to be a triple threat. Like, they were going to work Charlotte, Ronda, and Becky, all three, back into the match like they did a few years ago. It's kind of like the culmination of it. But with them doing Mania on 2 nights, it makes sense to split the titles and each one have their own belt. I feel like Becky Lynch, Bianca Belair makes sense because of the build from SummerSlam last year. So I feel like that's a good way to go. We know those two will put on a banger of a match. Belair winning in dominant fashion in the Elimination Chamber, what she did with Rhea Ripley there was great. But I feel like overall the build-up for that one was better than the other one. Charlotte and Ronda to me just hasn't really done it for me. Charlotte, in my opinion, is one of the best women wrestlers on the planet. Like, she's a powerhouse. She looks good. She talks good. She works good. She can, use facials. She can work the ref. She can work the crowd. She can do it all. And there's not a lot of women left out there right now on any major roster that can do everything. And I feel like Ronda Rousey, however big of a star she isn't the star for night one of WrestleMania, because there's so many other good, talented women that deserve a push. I mean, you can look just right there on the roster with somebody like Naomi, for instance, who is long overdue for another world title push, who comes from a family of wrestling and the history behind what she does, who could very well have slid into Ronda Rousey's spot, not in the mega starlight kind of way, but just in a wrestling superstar capacity, because this isn't going to main event night one anyways. We know the other matches. So I feel like,
right,
unless I'm wrong, have they changed that? Do you know if they've changed that or not? Because I was under the impression that Bianca and Becky were going to main event.
So I don't know what match is going to main event. I know they said that the KO show will close the night.
Oh yeah, I've got KO closing it, but when I thought main event, I thought the final match. There's no way the KO.
Oh yeah.
But I think my understanding was that Becky Bianca were going to be the final match of the night one, and that makes sense to me because I know that could, looking at the rest of the card for night one, could very well be the match of the night, depending on who Seth's opponent is.
Yeah, and I mean, Bianca had a great match with Sasha to close out night one last year. I think Bianca, I can't remember what, I think it was her that I had picked for like Woman of the Year, and for my picks, I believe it ended up being Britt Baker in the Wrestling Observer or PWI, one of them. I don't even remember now. But yeah, Bianca is just, she's become a star. I feel like she started to blow up at the end of the lockdown era there with the Thunderdome and everything, and then she got her Rumble win, and she went up from there, and I think she did fantastic, and she's not going down anytime soon. So yeah, these two matches will be really good. All four of them are really talented performers, so looking forward to the matches. These two are why, not the whole reason, but these are two matches why I said rematch Mania, because we've seen Becky and Bianca, we've seen Charlotte and Ronda, so I don't know.
I mean, if you just go off of that, we've seen those two matches. We've seen Drew and Corbin. We've seen, even if it is Cody, we've seen Cody and Seth. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many of these, but I think it's great to look at it and from the perspective that the two women's title matches, the Raw title and the SmackDown title, could be match of the night 1 and 2 in either order because of the four women competing, whereas the rest of the card outside of the tag match is just kind of filler, in my opinion. And the only reason I say the tag title match is because the Usos have worn the straps for so long.
Yeah, I mean, it is a lot, like, it's a nice blend, and yeah, there's something to be said for like culminations of feuds and rematches. I mean, sometimes the rematches surpass the originals, especially when it's WrestleMania. Everybody steps up their game, theoretically. So yeah, it could be a lot better. Well, that was talk of night one of WrestleMania coming up this weekend. Part 2 is going to be posted right after this, so make sure to check that out. If the subscribe button down below is red, that means you haven't subscribed yet. So go ahead and click on that and subscribe to the channel. And I have all of Will's information down below in the description of the video, so make sure to check out everything he's doing on Botched Spots and Chair Shots. And we will be back for night 2 in part 2 right after this.